Hello, Eric.
Yes.
How you doing? It's Michael Persh calling from Australia. Sandy set me up to
Hi,
say
Mike.
hello. How are you?
How are you doing?
I'm very
Doing very
well.
well. How about you?
Very well, mate. It's lovely to say hello again. We spoke a few years ago, didn't we? When I think it's when Galactic Collective came out. So it's been a while.
It has. That must have been, I'm going to say 2012
Okay.
at least. So it's been probably a good 2 years.
So it's very nice to say hello again. And as always, you've been a very busy man, mate.
I do my best.
I always follow what you do, and Sandy does a very good job of keeping all of us informed about what you guys are up to. And I'm always amazed that there's never seems to be a down period. There's always something happening.
That's true, yes. Well, I do my best to keep busy.
And your latest recording with the Rocket Scientists is something really special. I really like it. It's I guess one of the things I love about classic prog is to take a theme and explore that theme, and the main tune on the EP really does that.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, because that's exactly the spirit of it. It's really about the freedom of being able to explore and be a bit experimental, and to make what I would call unhurried music. We're so often tied into this more commercial format of, okay, you play the intro and the verse, and you have to get to the chorus, and then you have to do another verse and another chorus, and it's very formulaic, and sure, that's the way pop music and rock music is built, and there have been tens of thousands of great songs with that structure and that formula. But when you work like that, you're always in a bit of a hurry because there's not really room to sprawl and stretch out and go down a path and develop something in a more symphonic style, or a more experimental style, or even like a jazz fusion kind of style. And on this album, that's really what we did. And we didn't set out to do that. We actually set out to just make a regular album with vocal songs and instrumental songs. And this lead piece, Traveler on the Supernatural Highways, was meant to be the overture and the finale to the album. And as you know, I've done that over the years on lots of albums, on my own albums, on the Lana Lane albums, the previous Rocket Scientists albums. And I wanted to do that for this new Rocket Scientists album as well. And so I ended up writing this theme, and it evolved into a larger theme, and then into a second movement, and then a third movement, and a fourth movement. And pretty soon it had grown into this piece all its own. And when we tried to edit it down or cut it into smaller bite-sized parts to maybe, put throughout the album, it kind of lost the magic. And we thought, let's just make, this long, epic piece. And we won't try to fit it into the mold of a traditional album. And let's just release it on its own. And that's really how the whole thing came about.
Well, I'm very glad you did indeed, and it takes you on a journey, and that's what I really love, and that's what I've always loved about, to draw a comparison that we spoke about last time. Rick Wakeman did that when we were kids so well, and it's such a wonderful thing that you're carrying on a tradition, I think.
Michael, are you there?
Hello, yes, did you get that?
Yes, I just heard a click and I lost you for a minute.
Well,
But, I heard heard you saying about talking about Rick Wakeman, and when we were kids, and he would just take you on this journey, and then it clicked, and then there was silence. But
okay, and that's where this is taking me, Eric. It reminds me of those things where it gives you time to tell a musical story, and you really have time to get to to just fall into that story and let it take you away.
Well, thank you very much. That's a high compliment, being even mentioned in the same sentence as Rick Wakeman and those people. That's absolutely the intent, that we go on a journey and that it tells a story. And like a great novel, there should be chapters of the story. And the mood of one chapter is not necessarily the mood of another chapter. And when you think about Rick's great albums, like Journey to the Center of the Earth, or the King Arthur album, or even the Six Wives of Henry VIII, there's a lot of different musical stories going on in those albums. And of course, his work with Yes was very much the same way. I couldn't really imagine the song Close to the Edge being cut down to 4 minutes.
Absolutely not, no.
So I don't think we're trying to copy any of that or even recreate the magic of what those fantastic artists of yore did. But I hope that we are embracing the same spirit of what they did, in that we're just trying to do something really creative, really honest, and really just using our lifetime of musical experience and our broad musical vocabulary to say something new and tell a new story.
Yes, absolutely, and I think you've hit the nail on the head. It is embracing those things that we love about the music from the past, that we and keeping that alive. And as you say, I think it's somewhat a lost art. It's interesting you mentioned before, because a couple of weeks ago, a couple of the guys from 2001 were touring Australia, and they'd come and do a Q&A and screen the movie, and I love the movie, and I took my wife to see this, and she'd never seen the movie, and afterwards she said it was very, very slow, and I said that's the whole intent. It takes you you need to slow down and just let yourself flow along with it.
That's right. 2001 it's one of the greatest films of all time, and 2001: A Space Odyssey is not Star Wars,
absolutely,
which is also a great film, but they're completely different ethics, aren't they? You've got one that is kind of a study in mood and texture and even behavior, and then the other one is more of a just kind of fun romp action movie. Both of them are great films, but 2001 is very much more this artistic, broad statement, and it's not in any hurry. It takes its time. Even the last sequence when they're going through time and space, and finally when he becomes the Star Child. It goes on and on and on, and if you're in a hurry, for them to get there, it's going to drive you crazy. But if you just relax and take in the whole experience of it, it's just absolutely wonderful cinema.
Indeed. And Eric, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think last year was the 20th anniversary of the rocket scientists. So Mark and Don and yourself have really, and you can hear that on every recording you make. There's a musical, there's magic between you guys, and it's obviously that there's something very special for you guys to be making great music for such a long period of time.
That's really the case. Mark McCrite and I met in high school, actually. It was in Mr. Costly's European history class, I remember very well. And we've been making music ever since. And I met Don, maybe just a couple couple years after that, Don was a session bass player and stick player, and we just got along instantly. And we've worked together, I mean, pretty consistently for the last 20 years. And obviously there hasn't been a Rocket Scientist album every year for 20 years. But Don and Mark have been involved in all the other projects we do, of course, on the Lana Lane albums, and even on my solo albums. Both Don and Mark have played on those. So it's just a great relationship, both musically and personally, and we all have just great respect for each other, and I think we also have a very good understanding of each other. And there's a time for us to come together and make an album like this, and then there's times when we need to go off and kind of do our own thing. And, you know, we've always treated each other with respect and support, and it's just a real band in the true meaning of the word. I can even think of a project that Mark had nothing to do with whatsoever, and that was my Live in St. Petersburg DVD and album that I released it was nearly 10 years ago. And this was a concert that we had recorded in St. Petersburg, Russia, at the end of a tour that Lana and I had done. And I think we played something like 30 shows. We started in Madrid and made our way east across Europe. And so by the time we got to St. Petersburg, boy, the band was just really, you know, on fire, and the show was really tight, and we had recorded the audio of most of those shows. But at this one particular show in St. Petersburg, because of the way the room was set up, they had video screens up in various parts of the room, so that no matter where you were in the room, you could see what was going on the stage. And we were actually able to get, so they recorded that as they broadcast it, and we were actually able to get copies of the camera footage. And so then it occurred to me, hey, you know, this could be a DVD if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But the quality of it was not that great. Like, it was a little bit oversaturated, and it was the format, the strange video format they used was kind of compressed, and so it looked a little bit pixelated. And so I sent it to Mark McCrite, who was not on that tour at all. He had nothing to do with that particular group and that tour. And I said, what do you think of this? And, you know, without qualifying it at all, I just sent it to him and said, please have a look at this and tell me what you think. And he came back and he said, this is something, and I know you would like the quality of it to be better, but this really has a vibe to it. It really captures, you know, the mood of one of your concerts, and I think you would be crazy not to put this out. And so we did. And I mean, I credit Mark for that DVD coming into existence, because if it weren't for his advice and for his counsel, I don't think I would have followed through with it.
And there's a lot of fans, including myself, that have seen that and are very glad that his advice helped you put that out, because there are times where a DVD or even a live album captures a moment in time that is very special, and even if it isn't 100% quality-wise of what you would like, it's the capturing of the moment when you look back in time. That's it's a historical document.
That's absolutely the case, and I don't know that any live album that I've done is exactly the performance you want. You know, the show that you choose to record, that you have the video crew come out for, is not always your best show. And, sometimes your best show is in this, crappy little club with bad lighting and a small stage and 50 people in the audience. that could be your best show. Not the one that's in the big, beautiful theater with 1,000 people attending and, that sort of thing. But that's the one you choose to record. So that's the world we live in, I suppose. It's never ideal.
No, absolutely. But as I said, it's nice to capture those moments. And on the subject of the history of the band, there's a lovely box set called Looking Backwards kicking around that I would highly recommend if people would like to go and check out the back catalogue of the Rocket Scientists.
That's a really great set, and I'm so happy we did that. We had reached the point in 2007 where at that time, let's see, that would have been about 14 years after the first album came out, where our previous record deals had ended, and stock of some of the first albums was getting low, and we needed to do reissues of the first three albums. And so the traditional wisdom is that you remaster and you might put on a bonus track or something like that. But we didn't want to do that. We wanted to do something a little bit special. So on the Looking Backwards set, we did release the first three albums remastered with bonus tracks, like you would expect. But for the fourth disc, we went into the studio and we played songs from those first three albums live in the studio, and then we brought in a high-definition video crew to document the whole thing, and we released that on the fifth disc, which is a DVD, along with an hour or so of interview footage. And so it's kind of a super deluxe retrospective of the first 14 years of the band. And you can even listen to that new live in the studio recording we did and get a pretty good overview of the first three albums. Mm-hmm. And if you want to go deeper, of course, there are the actual first three albums in that set as well. And along with, like a 64-page 5x7 booklet that we included. So that was a pretty neat set, and I hope we get to do more things like that in the future.
Absolutely. And just going back to the new EP, again, I think one of the lovely things that I've seen a lot of great prog acts over the years since I was a kid is there's, as we said about Supernatural Highways, there's a symphonic aspect to doing something long form and exploring a musical theme, but also so many bands also will go the other way and show their sense of humour and record something that's a little bit left field and really puts a smile on your face and takes you totally somewhere else. And you've done that with the James Bond theme on this one.
Super. I'm glad it comes off that way. We did a cover of On Her Majesty's Secret Service. So it's not the 007 theme that you normally would think of first when you say James Bond music, but it's this kind of, classic brass theme. Excuse me. All right, I'm back. This classic brass theme playing this kind of, almost Ennio Morricone type sounding, triumphant music. And we came to this song for and because of Mark McCrite. Mark has been a John Barry fan since he was a kid. John Barry, of course, the composer of that, and most of the classic Bond music. And he'd always, loved this particular song. And as he tells it, this was the first record that he ever had. And he played it so much that he wore it out, and he actually had to get another copy later on. So when we were doing the writing for this album, we had always we did the UFO theme, from the 70s science fiction series.
Yes.
And then on Oblivion Days, the album before that, we did Space 1999, which always went over really well in concert. And so for this one, rather than just, picking up another science fiction theme, Doctor Who or something like that, we thought, well, let's try this Bond theme. Mark has been, such a fan of this for so long, and the Traveler on the Supernatural Highways piece was a lot about me and the synthesizers, and a lot about Don Schiff and the NS stick instrument and the cello. Mark, of course, plays wonderful guitar on the whole thing, but he's in some ways, the third man on that piece. So we thought, okay, let's represent the band correctly, and let's do something for Mark. And so that's what On Her Majesty's Secret Service is all about. So Mark and I came up with this really nice arrangement of it that we thought suited the band, and I brought in the horn players that played on my Hommage Symphonique covers album that I had done a few years ago. Just some fantastic horn musicians, because you can't really properly do a James Bond cover without brass.
No.
So we brought those guys in, and that's the result.
Well, tell Mark that my take on it is he's done it especially for us folks in Australia, because it's as James Bond fans will know, that George Lazenby was the only Australian James Bond, and unfortunately only made one movie.
Well, that is unfortunate, because he was great, and I thought he brought something really interesting to the character. And why not have an Australian James Bond? That's perfectly okay in my book.
Absolutely, and there's a great story that his agent apparently recommended after that movie that there was no future in James Bond movies to not make any, or not take up the option to make any more. I hope he sacked that agent really quickly.
I've heard terrible stories about poor George and the advice that he was given, and wow, he could have had just a wonderful career, but well, we have that one film at least.
Absolutely. And let's just quickly talk about the other guys playing on the recordings, because behind the drum kit you have one of the greatest drum kits on earth, drummers on earth.
Yes, you're speaking about Greg Bissonette.
Yes.
Greg is a great friend, and we've known each other for nearly 15 years now. And Greg is probably the leading session drummer in the world. I think we can actually go that far. He's played with everyone from Maynard Ferguson, the jazz trumpet player, to David Lee Roth, of course, to ELO. He goes out with James Taylor, just all sorts of different artists. And Greg is so in demand because not only is he an amazing drummer, but he really fits into the music that he's playing. I mean, he can go from, big band swing to, double bass heavy metal on a dime. He can make that turn really, really fast. And, music like the Rocket Scientist music calls for that. It requires you to have a very big musical vocabulary. And if you're just a rock drummer, or you're just a metal drummer, or you're just a jazz drummer, you're going to run into some trouble, because, we all like a lot of different kinds of music. And I think that comes through in the music. So it's great to have someone like Greg, where you can make a reference, you can talk about Gene Krupa, and then you can talk about Neil Peart.
Yes,
He knows
indeed.
exactly what you mean on both of them. And then the other thing about Greg is he also knows most of those guys. Well, Gene Krupa is not alive anymore, of course, but, we'd mention, someone like, Omar Hakim or someone, and then Greg would call him on the phone and say, Omar, it's Greg, yeah, we were just talking about you. And that's just kind of his spirit. And, in addition to musical talent he has. He's just a really great man, and he's fun to record with, and just a very positive force to have in the studio. So it's, we hardly have to give it a second thought when we call him to come in and play on these records. And then, of course, we also have another Greg Ellis, who has drummed on so many of my productions over the years. He played on my first solo album, Threshold, and in fact, several other of my solo albums after that. He played on the Rocket Scientist's Oblivion Days album and also on the Looking Backward sessions that we talked about. And so to have the two of those guys together was almost an embarrassment of riches, because what they brought was just so creative and so powerful, and sometimes you would have to make a decision. I would have to make a decision, going, okay, well, geez, the hand drums here are just amazing. Oh, but the drum kit here is pretty great too. But I can't, you can't feature both. So I'd have to say, okay, well, I'm going to let the Doombeck come through in this part, and then in this part, I'm going to let the trap kit come through a little more. So just a wonderful, wonderful pair of drummers and an amazing pair of Gregs.
Indeed, but that also is something, Eric, that we spoke about before. That a long form piece gives you the opportunity to do that, to explore those things and bring out different instruments where a 3-minute pop tune, unfortunately, for better or worse, doesn't give you that opportunity.
And like that's absolutely correct. And in a 3-minute pop tune, you might have 4 drum fills in the entire song. And this long-form piece really let us establish some grooves and let those grooves evolve and change hues and change colors, and just kind of go along with the rest of the music. And not only do we have the different colors in the drums and percussion, but we also, the three of us, me, Mark, and Don, we played a lot of different instruments ourselves through the song. I mean, it's normal for a keyboard player, I suppose, to play 6 or 7 keyboards in a song, but you'll see a Mark McCrite going from acoustic 12-string to a Stratocaster to a Les Paul to a different Les Paul to a 6-string acoustic guitar, and so forth. And Don Schiff played 2 different kinds of sticks, one fretted and the other fretless. And then something else that Don really debuted on this recording is his cello. Don has always been a fan of strings and cello in particular, and so I think a few years ago he just decided, okay, I'm just going to learn how to play it. So he went out and he bought himself a cello, and he learned how to play it. And so when we were writing and demoing for this album, he just kind of said, oh, by the way, I play cello now, so if you want me to do any cello parts, let me know. And so Mark and I were like, you're kidding, right? No, I can do some cello parts. And so we just kept throwing more and more at him. And in fact, the cello break at the end of the part 2 section on Traveler on the Supernatural Highways, I wrote specifically because Don now played the cello. So I wrote this kind of 4-part chorale to conclude this one section. And the joke was, if you remember the scene in The Matrix when Keanu Reeves learns about how they can download these skills into him, and he looks at the camera deadpan and says, "I know kung fu." It was like that with Don. It was like, "I know cello."
Don't you hate people like that?
So we ended up writing just a load of cello parts throughout the thing, and Don, of course, came up with a lot on his own, and it's just a wonderful addition to the band, and very much in the style of what we do.
Eric, it does add such a wonderful new dimension. It is really wonderful. So how does I'm assuming you're taking these tunes out to play them live. Have you? Is that a challenge to look at these? You know how you're actually going to do this on stage?
Well, we haven't done it yet. I'm actually in the middle of a tour with the Galactic Collective. I have a couple more shows next week, and so I've been following through with that. I think there is a good chance after that we could take the Rocket Scientists show on the road, as the expression goes. So when we do that, we'll do what we always do, and just figure out a way to, adapt the studio version into a compelling live version, and just figure out a way to bring the music to the stage in the most interesting and sincere way possible.
I know we spoke about this last time we had a chat, but hopefully sooner rather than later that road will lead you to Australia.
I would really love that, and we have more and more fans in Australia every year, and we get asked the same thing, well, when can you come to Australia and play? And I say, well, if you have 1,000 friends, we could come. And now it's getting down to, well, if you have 500 friends, maybe we can come. So maybe if we can get it down to only needing another 10 or 15 friends, then we can make it work.
We're getting there slowly. We wait with bated breath. It's interesting. I spoke, I guess about the same time that we spoke last time. I had John Payne on the show, and we had a similar conversation that how much that we would love to see Asia come to Australia. It's the band in any form has never played in Australia, and we would have loved to have seen him bring the band to Australia, and lots have happened. We won't get into that, but so much has happened with the band Asia since then. But we get this. We wait with bated breath, indeed.
So many musicians have come through that band. You would think at least someone could come down there and play some Asia songs.
Yeah, well, Jeffrey was here with Yes a couple of years ago, but they have had far too many of wonderful Yes tunes to play, but there are no complaints.
Yes, I can imagine that. Yes has quite a spectacular catalog, and they could play for 10 hours straight and still not even touch half of their material.
No, indeed. But as I said, it would be lovely to, and you're in that boat, my friend. So it would be lovely to have you visit us in any shape or form, to whichever outfit brings you to this part of the world. It would be lovely for us to have the opportunity to see you play.
I would absolutely love it, and let's keep a good thought that that can happen sooner than later.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much, mate. It's a pleasure to say hello again, and I hope it's not this long before we catch up again. And I wish you all the best with this recording. It really is wonderful, and I've been playing it over and over and over since I got my hands on it, and I hope it really opens a lot of people's ears that may not have been familiar with your music. But there's so much. Once people discover you, there is so many wonderful things to go back and discover.
Well, that's fantastic. I really appreciate the support as always, and it's certainly great to speak to you again, Michael. And when I think about it, I said at the beginning that I thought it was 2012. I think it was actually 2010 when we spoke. So it has definitely been a few years. So we shall try to not wait that long before the next conversation.
Indeed, far too long indeed. As last time, mate, it's been a great pleasure to say hello, and I really wish you all the best. And as I said, we fingers crossed that we will keep our eyes on the gig guides of the world, and hopefully Australia will pop up on one of those gig guides.
I will keep a good thought for that.
All right, thank you so much, mate. Been a pleasure, and take care.
Likewise. Same to you, Michael.
All the best. See you, mate.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.